Alright, so how's everyone doing? Good? Alrighty, first off, Lew Temple. First off, we'll talk a little Devil's Rejects since you guys were all in the film. Let's just go down the line. How did you all get involved in the film?
My involvement was through the old-fashioned process of auditioning, and I had auditioned for the role of Adam Banjo. I read the script, and I thought it was well beyond anything I had ever read, and all of a sudden I got wind that I was being considered, and I started becoming a little nervous, being a good Christian boy from the South to go work for this devil worshiper named Rob Zombie. And then I got offered the role, and I was really worried that my whole world belief system was going to be upturned. And I called a friend of mine, another Southern fellow, Walton Goggins, who had done House of a Thousand Corpses. And I asked him, he said, do yourself a favor, take that job. You'll have a great experience, and you'll make a friend for life in Rob Zombie. And truer words than spoke. So I was very fortunate in not just to work with Rob, but also to work with such incredible talent like these two, amongst a plethora of others, as you all know. So it was really a gift that keeps on giving. They get to see them now and talk old time. That's my story.
Steve, how about you?
I got involved. God, I'm glad. The producer, Mike Elliott, is a close friend of mine. He actually called and asked me if I could do this. And I said, of course not. And I didn't know, I want to say this about a new film. Just a wonderful group of people in this stuff. I didn't know Rob's music. I didn't really know Rob. I didn't. And it turned out to be just a incredible experience. Well, most of my stuff was Bill and a dead body. But
That was my wife.
But Rob really he's just a class actor, and I'm so glad I had the opportunity to come and do this little film because I got to see Rob, and he was just he has a lot of patience, and he came up to me when I rapped, and he asked me if I could have his, he could have my autograph. I'll never forget that. I really mean that. I said, yeah, what do you want me to say? Anyway, also, I got to spend so much time with some wonderful people. Priscilla, that I hadn't seen in a while. That's my story.
William?
I got a call from my agent, and he says Rob Zombie wants to talk to you. So I wasn't in Los Angeles. We set up a phone call, and the next thing you know, I'm on the phone with Rob, and I have this close to 3-hour phone conversation with him. And we were talking about, the things we were talking about were like Lee Marvin, Robert Shaw. We were talking about all these kinds of actors that were these, real dudes. And for whatever reason, the conversation just kept going on. And we were having a really good talk and having a lot of fun. Give me 5 of my movie set. It was great. He, you know, for a conversation with somebody you don't know to last for 3 hours is really amazing. And I didn't really know a lot about Rob. I mean, I knew of his music, but I didn't really know his music. And I had never seen House of a Thousand Corpses. But whatever conversation I had with this guy, believe me, after years of being in the business, you know when somebody knows their shit. And I could tell, just there was something about it. So by the time the conversation was over with, on the phone, Rob offered me the role without ever having met. And so that was spectacular. So that was spectacular. And yeah, man, we'd have to hang him by a hook. Old school. But so I didn't meet, you know, I hadn't met him. So now I fly out to LA, and of all things, Rob's office was in a building that was once the Great Western Bank. And back in the day, John Wayne, I think, was the first guy to ever do commercials for Great Western Bank. And there's this amazing statue of John Wayne in front of this building. I mean, it's tall, he's on a horse, and it's huge. You look up at it and wonder. And I stood there outside the building, and I'm looking at John Wayne. So I went, grabbed my cell phone, and I called Rob, and I go, "Hi, Rob, I'm here." And he goes, "Great, come on up." And I go, "No, you come down." So suddenly you hear silence, like, who's this asshole? You know? And he, sure enough, he came down, and we met, and we shook hands, we hugged, and then I just looked at him, and I just went, "See him?" I said, "That's who the hell he thinks he is." You know? And it was just so perfect, and we suddenly connected on it, and it was like the beginning of John Quincy Waddell. Yeah, and it was great. I mean, and what Lou was saying, you know, that they were all together a long time, and they were a family, and they had something going on. And immediately they opened up the doors to us, and we became part of the family. And it was really fantastic. Rob is a wonderful director, and he trusts the people that he hires. You know, improvisation and bringing what you bring to the character is very important to him. And it was really, you know, day one of a really fantastic 10-week experience, you know. So, and a friendship that now I believe will last for life. So it's
Yeah.
good, you know, special.
So Lou, you had mentioned, you know, Good Christian, Southern Boy. Was there any scenes that you filmed that you really had a problem with?
Well, I think Rob would have more problems than I did. And probably, that being said, he you know, just Bill's and Steve both. I'm just happy to be up here, seating with them. But Rob does have a great sense of performance and right and wrong. For those of you who have seen him on stage, you know he's a performer. He puts on a hell of a show. And he knows when something is real or lands. He knows truth, as these two would tell you. And so he'll call bullshit when it's not. He has no problem with that. That cell phone goes off, you would be fired. You wouldn't be asked to put it away. You'd just be banished to the cornfield. Immediately. I watched him turn out more crew and more actors that have never been heard from since. Because he knows what he wants and he wants what he knows. So, that being said, if something you do doesn't work, he'll give you some time to maybe find it, but not a lot, because he knows right away instinctually this is going to fly or this isn't. So, yes, he has incredible patience when he believes in it, but when he doesn't, he's going to move on. And I love that. I just think that is special in his directorial stuff. Tough things were probably more in Halloween for me personally. The rape scene was very difficult, and it was a lot of work. You know, some of the stuff in the hotel room with Priscilla Barnes was not easy. I think
Tougher for her.
yeah, It was, and I think the whole shoot, if you ever watched the DVD special, the 30 Days of Hell, you'll know how grueling the shoot was. The stuff they did, the interrogations, just, you know, it's just such, it's so raw and visceral what he wants, and he brings that intensity to it that it's
And the
incredible.
crappiest, nastiest location.
Unbelievable. It's real. I mean, the focus
100
is.
degrees every day.
But he lets you know that he's there for you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, he's there 100, and whatever you need, he will provide that. If you need the set clear, if you need rock and roll music, if you need blue M&Ms, just whatever it takes to make the scene perfect. So I don't think there's anything that he asked me to do that was out of my moral compass, clearly, but he's just really, really exceptional at what he does, and I think he continues to get better. To support what Bill says is he does trust you, and he expects you to bring something to his party. He's put a framework in the form of the script, but he wants you to drywall and put in the electric and the plumbing, and he's asking you to bring that. And if you show up without something, it's a real pain in his tuchus to give it to you. So he might send you the corner deal. You show up without a character, you're probably not going to be in the movie.
Well, with a lot of trust, you know, which is, you know, he does put trust in his actors, but that makes it even more your responsibility to make sure you bring your A game. And every scene was like that. I mean, there would be things, you know, I always loved the Elvis scene that was in the movie, because I looked at Rob and I said, I'm not going to sit here and listen to somebody talk shit about Elvis.
Right.
and it wasn't in the script really.
No.
And Rob just goes, do whatever you would do.
That's a perfect example. It's exactly it. In the hotel scene, he asked me, "What do you think if you saw a guy get executed?" I said, "I'd probably lose my lunch." Last thing I should have said, because we had to film that about 10 times. That was Campbell's clam chowder, chunk of potato soup.
Oh, I thought you were really cute.
Oh, not that good. But that's exactly the type of thing he does rely, and he goes with it, and knows that it works, because he trusts you.
I just remember how kind he was, because I don't remember what was happening that day. But I just, when I finished, I just walked over to him and I said, Robert, I just want to thank you for your patience. You really and it's a pleasure to know you and to work with you, and I really appreciate your patience. And I just wanted to thank you. And he kind of brings that out in you, because you know he's there for you. I don't know, at least I thought he was.
Yeah.
And it meant a lot to me.
So we had so many funny moments on the movie, you know, we laughed for 10 weeks. I mean, it was, you know, God knows, it was hot and miserable and all that kind of stuff, but you don't ever notice it when you're constantly creating with people who are fantastic. And Steve over here has been one of my favorite actors since I was, you know, in my 20s, and I've always...
Thank God you didn't say when you were 5.
Well, it was been the scene. and to show up, and I didn't really know until sort of the last minute, and to show up and there was Steve, you know.
Oh, cool.
And the minute and that particular scene we did together, I love so much, because it's really the 1 minute in the movie when you see what this guy would have been like if he wasn't, you know, on this vendetta to kill everyone. It's this 1 minute where it's like these two dudes who both share something in common, and it's the only time you look in a window and it's not somebody driven to do something. And if the whole movie was full of surprises like that, you know, like Ken Forey, like he wouldn't show fear. Like, you know, I remember I'm talking to him, he's like, you know, and I'm like, well, so it was funny. He had his hand on the car door right there, and I said, all right. you know, and it's a big hand too. So he was there, and finally I said something to him, and I just opened the door a little. When it caught his hand, you know, and, oh, you know,
That's great.
but you know, Ken's like, motherfucker. And Rob, I looked over at Rob, and he's laughing. You know, it's just a good time and special. I mean, really, these days we've been talking about this all day. To find directors that are really good, it's getting hard. You know, a lot of people don't understand the process we go through, and because Rob, anything he got the hard way. You know, he understood, and it was the movie was one of the great pleasures in the last 10 years.
Now you and Lou both worked with him on Halloween. Did you notice anything different from Rob at Rejects to Rob at Halloween? It was a few years later. Maybe learned some things. Were there any key differences?
I think that for me, my observation was mainly, he was working for different people. So sometimes, no matter who you are, sometimes you work for somebody. In this case, it was the Weinsteins. And I personally feel like he was a little penned in that form and fashion. Also, he was working under the confines of a franchise piece with Mr. Carpenter's, piece, and I felt like he was respectful of that and was also a bit pinned in by that. I think the second one he might have let loose a little bit more. I feel like his natural gift is to tell story, and all the characters of Devil's Rejects were other characters. Mary Warnoff, who gets stabbed in the back, a very small scene, has a character arc. I feel like Rob's really good, and we love Devil's Rejects because there's such an arc to all the characters. A patrolman, a police, local sheriff, a patrolman comes over to investigate, a grisly, accident. We understand this person, and he just wants to get home and go to dinner, see his wife, and there's this mess with this, who is this? My face is there. But the thing is that all the characters of Devil's Rejects had this thumbprint of Rob's story arc, and I felt like in the Halloweens maybe it didn't. So was he as good a filmmaker? Yes, absolutely. Did he have shot composition? Maybe, I don't know. I think he was good. I feel like he might have been a little hamstrung in that process. And then when we go even farther to the second Halloween and Lords of Salem, we start seeing him. Thrilled to see what he does next, right? I mean, that's my opinion. Well, you have another.
Well, all he said to me was, "Oh, I got this part I want you to do." He goes, so he sends it to me, and I read it, and I go, "Rob." I said, "This guy is the lowest form of pervert that ever lived," And he just goes, "Yeah." He goes, "But you're gonna really do it great." He goes, "Just fuck with Sherry and the kid."
That's it. Yeah, and that's his thing. He blueprints. He knows he can count on that from William or Steve. He knows when he calls them. I have an idea it could be this way. With me, he wanted me to switch me and Danny Trejo. I want Danny to be the sweetheart and to be the asshole. So you guys switch roles this time. And but he knows that that we're gonna do it or bring it. And I respect that.
William, one of the scenes that I remember most of Rejects is when you're interrogating Leslie. How do you set up mentally for, I know it's acting, you guys are friends, but how do you get in that state?
That dirty old whore, man. It's a fireball.
I'll tell you who remembers it more than you is Leslie.
Oh, so she says constantly. She actually showed up the next day with a neck brace on. And I was just like, "Oh, boo, goddamn boo." I said, "You got to be kidding me! This Firefly family that runs around cutting poor Lou's face off and murdering everybody." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm a free bird, my ass." I'm gonna tell you right now, if it was my movie, they'd still be hanging in a goddamn meat locker.
So you also, Tom Tolles actually was here in the March show, and I asked him about working with you, and he said it was one of the greatest things. He was always a fan of yours. Those scenes were so great. Tell us about, I know it was only a day shooting, but tell us what was like working with Tom.
Those scenes are very important because the dream or whatever that is with his brother, is sort of the thing to make that crazy transition where you go from, you know, a guy on a vendetta, but yet a hero, and he's out to get these bastards for what they've done. And that one scene creates this strange transition where, you know, my guy's so strong, and suddenly I'm like, I'm trying to walk the line, man, you know, and you see him losing it, you know, the hat comes off, and there's this strange thing that occurs, and the next thing you know, he's talking to himself in the mirror, and then he's a different guy, you know, and it's, to me, that's the genius of that film.
I remember that
you know?
that was tough work. I remember that was difficult work. You talked a lot about that because we were all on set often together, you know, walking. He was punching in the clock. Hey, how you doing, William? I'm done. You start yet. But I remember you talking about how that was particularly difficult work.
Well, to make a transition like that on a dime, to suddenly become the villain, I mean, I don't know how any guy could be, like I said, free bird my ass.
Yeah.
I don't know how anybody could be rooting for these guys, but it was genius to take a couple of scenes and suddenly you've gone too far. And what you're doing is now, you know,
But
turn
that
you
was
into
great
a bad
because
guy.
you made that discovery, and and we see it in the film. But you made it on set. I think it didn't come to you until, was it looking in the mirror and taking the
Well, I
hat
asked
off?
Rob, that was an improv all in the mirror. And I asked Rob, I said, can I do this? I said, I think it's going to enforce what we're trying to do. And without even blinking an eye, not even knowing what I was going to say, Rob said yes. And he set that camera up. And to me, that scene is just
Which,
chilling.
by the way, those are things that aren't on shot lists. That's extra time. That's extra pressure on your camera crew. That's shooting through a mirror. That's just what they call a special. None of that stuff. And that's the type of thing that Rob says, yes, we're going to make it work. It's going to make my movie. It's going to make William. So he unequivocally has no problem. And that's old school John Ford stuff.
That
Yes, right? The guys, Arthur Penn stuff. That's Kazan
absolutely.
stuff. That's what they did.
Absolutely. And you know, that's what he said. Yes, it wasn't a shot list, it wasn't whatever, but he set up that camera and he let you go. And what a challenge. No, what I mean is,
Well, you know you have to do it.
Yeah.
There's no failing at that point.
All of a sudden, all right, let's
And,
shut down for half a day and bring in
Yeah.
this. We got to have a camera behind the mirror. William, you're good with this, right? Okay, then
Yeah.
you're gonna jump out of the helicopter without shooting.
But what I liked about it was even the way they set it up and they lit it. If you look at that scene, he looks different.
Yeah.
You know, the character changes. He's not the same guy. Now you see this, it's almost like you can almost see your skin getting action in a way. And it was really pretty amazing. And I could talk all day about Rob, but just the fact of how he trusts it and the way we would go about doing scenes. I mean, I can tell you, so many of the moments were just out of the blue. One take was fuck Groucho, you know. That guy Bob, the guy who was the critic, he just kept taking longer and longer to be dragged out of the room. He's like, yeah, but Groucho, and he just kept hanging in there. And this one time it went on, and I'm standing there, fuck Groucho. And it's magical because when you allow that kind of freedom in the work, then great things can happen. And then everybody mixes and really even better things can happen. And it's smart to know that. There are a lot of guys who are very tight and they won't allow things. And all you can possibly end up with is as far as their imagination can go. But now it's all our imaginations when you work that.
Which is all the stuff that you love. Those things are tutti frutti. I wouldn't do it to a chicken, but it looked like he might. Those are all things exactly that William's speaking of.
Yeah.
That are, because Rob frees that up. So,
Yeah.
and hires great people. Bring it.
Yeah, and I remember like the moment with Sid at the end when Sid's about to give this big like go on try and he's like all badass and I just go boom
Yeah.
and it was just like no one expected it either. I just like, no, I'm just gonna shoot him. And right, boom. Just and it's perfect because Sid was in one world and we were in another, and that's real collaboration, and that's what makes film interesting.
No doubt.
So one last question on Rejects before we talk individual careers. What's it like arriving on set and it's just a list of who's who of not only horror actors but actors? I mean, to the point where Steve Railsback and Tom Tolzer are brought in for cameos. I mean, these are just who's who of the entertainment world. What's it like to work in an environment like that? It's just got to be creativity gone around here.
Well, it's pretty intimidating for someone like me who had been, you know, a fan, incredible, a fan of all of these amazing actors. Two things. Rob has this penchant for hiring large men. You know, Rob Zombie, even though on stage he looks like a monster, huge, but he's Steve at my size. But he hires big dudes.
I was like a lollipop.
He
kid
was.
that
I mean,
movie.
he had, so you walk on set and you're amongst men, big guys. He likes having big physical people around, and so it's like, oh my god. And then at the reading, I'll never forget the table reading. First day, all these amazing people. And you just sat listening to it and read, and it was you got goosebumps. It was chilling. Everyone brought their A game, and it was like, oh man, there's nowhere to hide. I can't suck.
Few movies, when you sit down to that table read, you know, and I knew, I got a gut feeling, you know, like I got a gut feeling early on that we were going to make a really special movie, and you can't always tell. Sometimes you think you're making the greatest movie, and it's horrible, you know, everything. And I could tell early on that there was something really going on here, and you know.
So fun, and we would have a lot of, not downtime, but mixed cross time. I'll never forget you and myself and Jeffrey Lewis. I got to work with Clint Eastwood's best friend. You know, he has a card that says so. Clint Eastwood's best friend. We walked through that train that was out there on that ranch that we were shooting at. And the three of us, you talked about train stories, and he talked about train stories. And I hadn't done Unstoppable yet, so I had no train stories. Segue into individual careers.
We'll start with you.
No, start with William.
Start with William?
No.
Start with Steve.
Don't listen to Lou.
All right. So, Mr. Railsback.
Yes.
Obviously, Charlie Manson, Helter Skelter, probably the finest. Before, and you said you never wanted to meet Manson before you portrayed.
No, they asked me if I wanted to.
And why did you not want to?
Because I didn't want him to make me think he was something that he wasn't. I didn't want him to manipulate me. I just didn't. I just didn't want. I didn't want to meet. But you did a documentary on him in '69 or '70, and so I watched it like 10 times. The movements, the walks. I just watch it, and then I was going to say something. I think a negative makes it a positive. You can't act negative. So anyway, I use my imagination. They have this thing. You probably read it. I don't know. They always say that I would go 2 hours and sit in the closet. Which is that's not true, but it's a great story. I did it once for like a half an hour at one time because I just wanted to feel that solitude because he had been in institutions since he was 11 and he got out when he was 33. So that was the purpose of that. But now it's gone to 2 hours every day, you know. But
He won't come out.
and I did. I sat in there in a dark closet and I talked to myself, basically. But people ask me, they say, did you end up with a psychiatrist or a shrink after you doing that? I said, hell, man, I'm 29 years old. I'm diving over tables. I had a ball. And they don't, and they look at me like, no. You know, the Manson thing happened. I came out to do Manson from New York, and then I decided for some reason I didn't want to do it, and I actually turned it down. And I came all the way out here. And Kazan, who's mentor, my friend, whatever, my father. He Elia Kazan. Anyway, he was doing Last Tycoon, and I get this call, and Eileen, his longtime secretary, says, Steve, listen, Mr. Kazan wants to talk to you. I said, great, put him on. I just closed in a play on Broadway called Skin of Our Teeth. So anyway, he gets on the phone and he says, so how you doing? I said, fine. And he says, how'd the play go? I said, oh, it went great. It went fine. He said, so what's going on? I said, well, they want me to do this. They want me to play this Manson, Charles Manson. Now, this is so idiotic. I said, you know, I want to try to be a type. Wait, type. And so he says, oh, that's a Hollywood term. I don't know what that means. He said, well, who's directing it? I said, a guy named Tom Gray. And then he goes, oh, he says, Tom Price. He says, my God. He says, you've got to do it. He says, the guy's amazing. This and Steve, if you want to, come up to my office. We'll go through the script, scene by scene. He says, but you got to do this. You got to do it. And I go, God. I said, if you feel that way about it, I said, I'm doing it. I called up Tommy. I said, I want to do it. I'm doing it. And about 5 weeks later, I'm on the set, and I'm sitting with Tommy Price, and he looks at me, and all of a sudden he starts laughing. And I said, what? He said, did you get a call from Kazan? And I said, yeah. He said, you know, he's been a friend of mine for 25 years, and I called him up and said, would you talk this kid into doing it? That's the truth. And, you know, when that played, they only had ABC, NBC, CBS, it was CBS, and 2 independents at that time. They didn't have 500 channels. So over 100 million people watched it. And I turned it down. You see, Kazan always came into my life in a way that the fucking man's going, you know, but and so I did Helter Skelter. My first film was I filmed Cassandra, and called it Business. It was my first picture and Julie Woods' first picture, and then I did a picture with Jack Elam. Anyway, I did Helter Skelter, and things just started. All of a sudden, I was on for every killer in town, whether it was theatrical or television. If you slice somebody up, you got it. So I didn't work for like a year because I wanted. I didn't want to. I knew I'd had the chicken ranch, but I had a very short career. Because back then, in those days, they figured it was money, so they offered you more money. You know, that kind of stuff. And so I said, and then Stuntman came along. A picture I did with Peter O'Toole. And then From Here to Eternity, this entire miniseries, and I played Pruitt. My favorite actor is Carl Pruitt, my favorite Cliff. And I got to recreate Skin of Our Teeth, because Ann directed the first one, and I played Henry, the same part as Clay, and I played Pruitt. Different, but and that kind of set a course. And then I got really stupid, and I started turning things down. And anything was a killer. So what was that? What was the first the thing with Danny Glover and Mel Gibson?
Lethal Weapon.
Lethal Weapon. I turned that down. I turned that down because I had to kill somebody. Well, Gary's a good friend of mine. I love Gary so much. Don't believe everything you hear about Gary. But he took it and it brought his career all the way back up. I used to say to people, if I turn something down, it's a damn guaranteed hit. So anyway, I've just been so damn fortunate, so lucky in my life, to be able to you know, I want to say this real quick. There's a lot of scum, but there's also some most special. You know, you work in this business, and I'm sitting next to two of them right now, and it's a fact. And it's very, very important.
Steve, we also portrayed serial killer. I'm sorry, I have to ask.
Well, you know,
William, you're next.
Okay, I will say this about it. I am so proud of that because I think, in my opinion, it's one of the best, finest performances I ever did. It's my opinion, and I'm saying that because they brought it to me as a slasher film. I said I don't want to do it. I said, but if you want to do a character study, that interests me. And then they made me executive producer. And fine. And no, but the thing is that I had 3 months to do research. And I did research on everything. I've read all the 5 books. And and real quick, they always referred to a sly smile. They didn't have a diagnosis for it at the time. So he had schizophrenia. So I'm looking at DSM-3, which is what the psychiatrist uses and registers. And it tells you about this certain kind of schizophrenia. And then it tells you characteristics. And I'm looking, it's the third one, it's about midnight. And I'm looking, the third one said, a sly smile. And I screamed. I woke up the whole house, my kids, everybody. I hit gold. Because he didn't know he was doing it. And he wasn't hiding anything. And so I could it was just so freeing. It's just those little things. But Ed was so passive. Everything was held inside. And Manson, they're two opposites. Because Manson diving over tables and doing all this, and extroverted. And the opposite with Ed. And to me, that's such a challenge as an actor. I just love this work. I do. And I'm going to shut up because this is really what I live for. Is to bring somebody to life and feel. I mean, I don't know how to say it except. I'm so goddamn lucky that I'm fortunate that I'm able to do this stuff and to have the opportunity. And that's
Wait for just 1 second. Tell us about working with John Candy on Armed and Dangerous.
You know what? I want to tell you something about John Candy. John Candy, I don't know if he was underrated or not. I know he wasn't as a comic. But that man, if you've ever seen Planes, Horrible,
Yeah.
You're watching an actor go through all the different emotions that a human being can. That man's one of the most giving people I ever worked with. I had never, and nobody, they wouldn't hire me in comedy. And they did on this, and that's why I met John. And my God, that guy was so giving. He would give to me. He got this, hop on in here, Slim. He had no problem with me calling him Slim. It was just, and the two of us, we'd start improvising, just start making shit up and driving the director crazy. But we couldn't help it because he made me laugh. And John was one of the sweetest, kindest, giving people I've ever known. And we lost a wonderful man when we lost John Candy. We lost and that's what I'm talking about. I had got the pleasure of working with and knowing John Candy. You know, those kind of things just, where, you know,
You know, Unstoppable, Devil's Reject, Halloween, and the small show.
Yeah.
Part of The Walking Dead. Anybody hear of it? No. From someone that worked on the show, on the inside, what makes this show so popular?
I think, you know, obviously you do, the audience, but I think for the reason that it's where we're at today. Civil unrest, uncertainty in our politics, in our society. I think there's not one of us that doesn't wake up without survival on our mind, just survival of how to take care of our mortgage, our credit debt, price of gas, children going to school, a loved one, a parent suffering from some certain illness. These walkers are nothing more than a metaphor for the obstacles that we deal with in life. I really feel like sometimes we just like to push, pause, unplug it, the world, and reboot and start it over. I feel like we're in a bit of an apocalyptic mindset, so it might not be a bad thing if a few of us turned into, particularly the 1%ers, walkers where we can put a crowbar through their feet. So I think it's very pertinent here and now in his societal mindset as to why it's so popular. That's the show itself. The workings of the show, it's written very well. It's not unlike what we talked about in The Devil's Rejects. It's very collaborative. Starts in the writer's room, comes through the producing, and then the cast gets together and rewrites it. You'd love it, William. Black pages would be flying around, as William likes to call them. And it then finds its way onto the screen for your approval as the audience. I often just refer to you as the audience as opposed to fans because I think somehow there's this symbiotic relationship and osmosis. The show knows what to provide that you're seeking out, and somehow you send the message to the show what needs to happen, whether you like it or not. Somebody, your favorite character, gets killed out of nowhere, a gut punch. These are things that you're craving. It's hard work. It's very familial because it has to be. It's a lot of work. We have, like any show, you have 10 days to film an episode. 8 of those are working days, and you're on a sprint to get it done, and then start the next episode. And it's down in Georgia. It's in the sun. It's outdoors. It's hot. There's bugs, and it's a lot of movement and a lot of cameras being moved around, the setups, and trying to make the action right now. So I think for all those reasons the show works, but it's just good old-fashioned hard work. At the end of the day, you're tired as hell. Can't believe what you've just done, but an incredible feeling of accomplishment is toasted with cold beer.
So who was one of your favorite actors to work with on the line?
Oh, that's a hard one. That baby, Judith. Actually, that's my least favorite because I shouldn't say this about a child, but man, you know they're twins, so they keep growing, and we're trying to film a baby inside of a day for like 6 weeks. Did anyone ever notice Judith kept getting 6 days, you know? And then the baby's got a diaper fed. It's like babies, man. How do they kill a baby? When I got the call for Axel to go. I adore Andrew Lincoln, and I love his method of approaching his work, and I love how he really tries different things. He really looks at clouds from both sides now. And I like that Norman Reedus subtly throws a lot of seeds out there. I call him Johnny Appleseed because he drops little innuendos out there for the writers to pick up on and build on his story or storyline. He never had a crossbow. And look, Darryl wasn't even in the graphic novels. We know that. And then I think everybody, both of you know him and have worked with Scott Wilson, who's just an absolute delight. I mean, you may forget, but he was in Cold Blood, Great Gatsby. I mean, he shot Rob Redford in the heat of the night, and yet he tells me all the time, he said, I'll be remembered as Herschel. We all sort of, but I mean, check him out on his IMDb, but more than that, go see these movies because they're fantastic. I adore him and visiting, Burt Lancaster stories and whatnot. So those are great. And then a young man like Chandler Riggs, who's such a sweet person sitting here, but does a lot of heavy lifting for a boy that age as an actor. He's a fine actor, and he carries the mail and delivers. And so it's great. It's an honor to be with and subtle little Miss Thing, Melissa McBride, who really, it's her show now. If you think about it, it's her. She's going to save the day, I think. And so just the opportunity to see that kind of fine work being done and being part of it, it's great.
Do they keep you in the dark a lot about who was going to die? And when
Yes, yes. You don't get to know. I mean,
Get it
I was
like real life, don't
yeah,
you?
yeah. It's like, oh, shoot, is that the Grim Reaper? Yes. Oh, time's up. I was told 3 weeks in advance. I knew, and then you do the denial dance. Kill Judith. Then you figure out it's your die is cast, as they say. So you want to do a good job, which is what that's your job. Pull that off. So that's where we go to work to do that.
So William, it's great being on this stage with you, and I really didn't know where to start with any questions because your filmography is just vast and impressive. But one from my personal childhood, talk about working on Dick Tracy, working as a laptop, just the production that had to be.
Well, I had a meeting set up to go meet Warren Beatty, and I walked in and he didn't know anything about me at all. And he said, I hear good things about you. He goes, all right, I got an idea. He says, come back and see me in a couple days. I mean, a testament to what a fantastic director Warren is. He's one of the best directors I ever worked with, and I wish he'd done more films. I came back 3 days later. He knew every damn thing I'd ever done in my life. He must have spent the entire 3 days studying everything, and he knew everything suddenly. And it was kind of funny because it's Warren Beatty. Next thing I know, I got the limo showing up. Warren's like, yeah, come have lunch with me. So I'm like, okay, cool, Warren. So we go at lunch, we do all these things, and then, and he was literally whining and dining me to play this role. And I'm like, well, how am I going to say no to Warren Beatty? So I said, okay, Warren, I'll do it. Well, the minute I said I'll do it, the limo stopped. It was on today. And it was a great experience because, look, one of the greatest things about that film, besides working with Warren, was the group of actors. There were guys in that movie that were being taken out of the retirement home, the actors' retirement home. There were people that worked in silent films. There were guys from all these generations of phenomenal actors, and as well as the crew. And on any given day, you're sitting there with Al Pacino, Dick Van Dyke, Mike Mazursky, like all these amazing dudes, and we're having lunch. And I can't tell you that these are people I grew up watching all their films, and to be suddenly with them all. Now it wasn't easy. I got there at 3 a.m. every day, and they'd start slapping on the glue on the back of my neck, and it took 4 hours to put the makeup on. Well, I'm done about 7. Warren come rolling in about 11, and he'd want to work like an 18, 20-hour day. So there were days when I wore that literally around the clock, and I think my longest, I want to say it was something to 30 hours that I was in the makeup. So it was very challenging. But there was just something really special about the group of people that he had gathered. Ed Ross, I mean, Ed Ross was an undefeated amateur fighter. I think Ed Ross won the gold medal in the Olympics, and they took it back from him because it was the famous moment when everybody put up their fist with Black Power, and Ed threw his fist up, and he ended up being, there were so many interesting people involved in that film, and that was the biggest turn on of it, Getting to work with James Caan, which was funny. I'm looking, I love Caan, and there was a moment when he goes to get up, and I did this little move, and the look on his face, he wanted to kill me,
Yeah, right.
And it was just, and it was just the perfect timing. Everybody did that film. I don't think anyone was paid a lot of money to do it, believe it or not. Warren's so damn charming, that everybody, agreed to do it for less money than they make or anything else. And, any given day I walk by, there's Madonna giving people hell, and, it just was very and it's very special. I remember one crew guy saying, "Hey, Madonna, fuck you. This is America." And it just, there was just so much, and the film went on. It was a 6-month shoot, and it was absolutely, a fabulous experience, and you know what? I've been around, I've done a lot of things, but to have someone like Warren Beatty go on a talk show and tell the world, I used to, when Bonnie and Clyde came out, I was like, I was so into, that in those movies, but to have Warren Beatty go on a talk show and say to the whole world that this is one of the greatest actors that ever lived, which he said about me. And we talked about little things, little things that happened, and it was very special. And and it wasn't the beginning of my career. I had already been putting out stuff, but it kind of created a new renaissance. You get these periods where everything is phenomenal, it goes great, and then
yeah,
and then the roller coaster comes up again. But that was, it was phenomenal. I'm lucky.
The next film I want to ask you about, you played Richie Madonna in Out for Justice.
Out for Ego. Justice.
Yeah. So that's why I wanted to ask you, because Steven Seagal, this was like the height of his popularity, which is he's gone down the shitter, if you will. What was it like with Mr. Seagal?
Well, you got to understand, when I read that script, that was one of the best scripts I had seen in a long time. It was powerful. It had a feeling like Mean Streets. It was like a real movie script. And I was like, well, this guy does Aikido, and I was just trying to figure out how it was going to be done. So I went all balls to the walls. I remember I flew to New York, and I don't know if you've seen the movie, but my guy stays up for days because he's, coking and he's living his last day, So I flew to New York, and I got a car, like a town car, and I had him drive me around for something like 30 hours, and I didn't sleep. I just went everywhere, and I was all Richie'd out, But not with the coke, I might add. But I was so on edge, and then suddenly I go in the door to have the meeting, and I did. I went in the door, and I was, and I was Richie, and they offered it to me. And Steven said to me, "I'm not going to make a martial arts movie." He said, "I want to make this movie very real." Well, cut to about 2 days later. I had done some scene where, I had done a few things in the movie, and the next thing I know, here's new dialogue, and it would be like, get on the phone, get the Catapano brothers, tell them to bring their nunchucks. And I was like, oh, so it changed, But I was very lucky, and I really loved it because I got the film in Brooklyn, literally where I grew up. And I killed, the first guy that I killed in the movie, I killed right in front of a pizza place where I used to take my girlfriend. No, that was a festival. So I'm shooting people down, and to the point where a lady looked outside of a store at me, and she's looking at me like, and finally she goes, "Is that you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And it was the first time I had ever worked in Brooklyn, or really New York, for that matter. And there I was, terrorizing the streets, playing this guy, and I had a really good time doing the movie. And for all the things that went on in terms of, you know, Stephen was a sensitive guy. He had become a huge star. In fact, he had something going on that I don't think had happened since John Wayne. You know, it was a real franchise. And you know, and for all the trouble that it was and the pain, because I used to have, you know, I had this little gap here, and we were doing a scene, and he pushed me a little extra hard. I wasn't expecting it. I was expecting what we did, and I tried to get my hands up, and my teeth just crashed into a brick wall, and I felt them crack, and but I wouldn't let him know. I wouldn't tell him, because there was some part of me that felt like he'd like it. I don't know. I'm just not gonna. So I sucked it up, and then you know, of course, when the movie ended, I had to go fix my teeth and do this whole number, and you know, and so it was not an easy picture to do. By any means, and believe me, even he kicked the living crap out of me through 7 rooms of a house. You know? And I was like, you know, Steven, you know, anybody who can take a beating through 7 rooms is going to get 1 shot in. You know, and he was like, no. No. You know, you could never touch me. You know, and it was funny. So suddenly I go, okay, that makes sense. So I go, okay. I said, okay, you just hit me in the head with the frying pan. I'm down. You've been shot here. And I went up to him and I said, okay, so now I move in and I grab your wound right here. And I go, what would you do? So he takes his thumbs like to go to my eyes. And I put my head down and I went on his leg. And I go, that's one. You know. and it was like, he just looked like, you know, he like hated me. So. and I don't give a damn, you know, like I don't put anyone down, because you know, that was a great shot. We made a great movie, and it was 2 worlds colliding. My world was different than his world. Yeah. You know, I came from a place where, you know, like we were talking, Stephen and I have been talking, we would have camped out for 4 days to get a chance for one thing. You know, for an opportunity to just look at us. You know, we were so passionate. You know, and every time something great came along, you know, I'm going to be honest. I've always been grateful for it. You know. And the fact that the film turned out, and I think it may be the best of his films, or it's certainly one of the best too.
Yeah.
And God, they never stop playing it. You know, you do all these movies that you think are your greatest films, you can't see them anymore on TV, but Out for Justice.
But if I can say this, then I'm just speaking for myself. I don't really remember Steven Seagal in that movie, or I don't think about him. But I think about it. Oh, the William Forsythe movie, where most people say that. You know? One other thing that, and I'm gonna let you continue with your story. Besides all the work, which is incredibly vast, but incredibly versatile and different, and life and rich and really visceral, both these guys. But also with William, oddly like Chris Walken, great hair. He's got really interesting and great hair in all his films, including Devil's Rejects.
I'm about to cut it off, but Johnny Winter lives.
One last question.
One thing I got is hair.
You're Mr. Casey.
Yeah.
Now, that's based off a true story, and we hear that a lot in Hollywood. You know, it doesn't mean a lot, but this really was based on a true story.
It's a horrible true story.
It's one of the films that it wasn't so scary, but it like goosebumps right now. You know, it creeps me out. Like, how did you prepare? Did you do a lot of research on Casey? And sadly, what happened to your counterpart? How did you go about that?
Listen, when they offered me that part, and my gut kept telling me, don't do it, because I knew how, despicable a journey it was going to be. And I was like, I called my daughter. I remember that. I was like, offered me this power. What do you think? I just thought, I don't know if I want to do this. And I kept resisting it. And my daughter just said to me, do it. She said, do it. You'll find a way to make it so that it's going to do something good from it. And, I agreed to do it. The next thing I take off to Chicago. And the minute I get there, like, this is recent history. And I'm trying to find out things. it didn't exist. All roads kept leading to nowhere, and I got pissed off. And I realized this was a much bigger story than anybody had ever told. That this wasn't about a guy from the suburbs who was a homosexual killer. That this was a story that was about Chicago, and it was about corruption, and it was about, because there's no way that recent history can be altered without it being altered by someone. And I realized that people wanted to disassociate with him, so they literally covered up history, and there were many reasons that it was covered up, and I believe some of them were very, very horrible reasons. And as I began to dig in deeper, you know, I began to discover things. I met everyone. I met all the people who brought him down. One of the most revealing people I met his childhood friend who had grown up with him. And as I'm going along, I began to connect dots that even the police hadn't connected. And I started to discover things nobody knew about. And in fact, I got to the point where I was convinced, and I am to this day, I'm convinced there's at least 12 more victims that were never found. And I just kept pushing at it and pushing at it. I can corroborate that there was a restaurant that he once worked in, that 3 years after he worked in the restaurant, he was found in the basement of this restaurant with a young man cementing over a floor. And this is what makes this interesting is, right away I felt suspicious about it, but what makes it interesting is now this address has disappeared from the Hall of Records. It's gone. And you know what kind of power that would take to make that happen? I don't even want to know who could have, or what the reasons were that it happened. That is gone. And that was a famous bar. This was a place where the Blackhawks went, where the police went, where all people went. It's gone. It's now been many businesses, many makeovers, and now it's disappeared into Chicago, and no one knows the address. And with the story of what happened in that basement. So I began to discover things, and I don't know if you all know this, but a year and a half, 2 years ago, they reopened the case. And I know that part of it was, some things that I had done by going, because we're detectives. We look for truth when we play somebody. And let me tell you, it was the ugliest journey I've ever been on in my life. It was disgusting. There's things I would tell you, but I'm not going to, that even went further, But it just, it was a horrible journey to get to know who this guy was. And I met a lot of incredible people. The Chicago PD didn't get him. The guys who got him were the Des Plaines Police Department, and they're the ones who brought him down. There were weird things, like his name appeared on 5 missing persons reports, and he was never even interviewed by the law. There were weird things that just went on with it. And I just went in deep, and I found him. It was the ugliest goddamn journey I ever went on in my life. I think the movie is strong. It's so disturbing, and I'll tell you right now, I will never watch it again. But I say everybody should see it, but I'll never look at it again. I'll never look at it again as long as I live.
I agree. It's one of the most disturbing films because it's not graphically disturbing. It's just
Psychologically,
yes.
it's in the head of, to get, I began to dream weird dreams, and I began to dream dreams in point of view, and it was always driving in a car, driving past people, and it was, I can't explain this. I don't know. I'm maybe a little spiritual or not. I don't know, but I discovered that guys like him, there's something they like to live in, and when you bring them to life, there's a photograph I have on my table, and if you look at that photograph, it looks more like him than me. It was me, and it was a creepy journey. And, so I tuned up the Beach Boys, and I got the hell out of there as quick as I could.
We have time for just a couple questions. Anybody have any questions for these gentlemen? All right, I have one last one. You guys are a big part of the horror genre. Each one of you is a big part of the community. What do you think makes the horror genre have such rabid fans at their conventions and such knowledgeable fans of films that you've been in? What is it about?
I can answer one thing. When I first came to a convention, I thought, I'm kind of shy, I'm off to the side, I hide. You can't find me online, you know, if you do, they're imposters. It's like, I came to the first show, and I was kind of a little afraid almost to talk to everyone, if that makes any sense. And I thought I wouldn't like it. I thought I'd want to run. And the first people that came up to me, it shocked me. They're horror fans, but their knowledge of film was so strong, of all film, that it blew my mind. There were little tiny choices that I would make in parts, and people would come up to me and talk about it. I can tell you right now, the people in Hollywood missed it. I mean, somehow, you know, they got the gist of what you were doing, but the subtleties, it was the rare guy that got it. And I was so impressed by the fans, and it really hit me in a way that I can't even explain fully. That people were paying attention and caught the details. And the horror fans, almost down the line, are great movie fans. And it's the reason I come to these things, really, more than any other reason.
I think horror fans have a tendency to be very visceral. They like participating in a movie, and they like the movie participating in them, in their lives. And, wear their heart on their sleeve. They show up, and they're kind of emotionally available because they avail their emotions to the film to be played. And so I appreciate that. It's not unlike what we do. We oftentimes have to open up a vein and let Gacy or Manson in or out. And I think we connect that way. I think there's a lot of support in that. I think you appreciate what we do as we appreciate what your appreciation for it.
And also, just to add to that, to you and those, I love talking with all of you because the detail that you pick up, some people miss. I'm talking about the details. You know, and to hear you say certain things about a character or something, but the detail of a certain thing, it's wonderful. It's fascinating to me. I mean, you really watch. I mean, it's not just, oh, I really like that performance. You can get into detail about it. It's just really a nice thing for, I know for me, I have practice to hear because those details are what make up.
And actors are funny. They don't usually, I mean, in a situation like this, especially if someone brings it up, actors don't usually talk about those choices. Those are usually things that we keep inside us and they just end up in the movie. And to see somebody find those things, it's truly more rewarding than anything else.
It's your detective. You're the detective. That's what you've done. Because these are our secrets. I'm gonna slip this in. No one's gonna know this, but I gotta get it out. And I'm gonna do it subtly in this character, and no one's gonna notice. And then you do, a big car. Pretty good. That's amazing. I'm impressed.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time.
If you guys could you go around that way? We had a problem with the camera earlier. Somebody bumped us. Thank you.
They spent bad.